connection. Here we go. All right, we are live. Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert back with the TED Show, and we are doing our series, The Home Team Cares, and today we're focusing on comfort cases. Rob Shear's our guest. Peter Yanni is my teammate, my friend from our Maryland area office, and so Pete and I go way back, right, Pete? And we're going to talk we're going to talk about the wonderful organization that Rob is the founder of. So welcome to both of you gentlemen, and we're going to start with Pete, so Pete can do the intro and kind of give Rob that big Academy Awards introduction.
All right, great. Thanks, Ted. I really appreciate you having this show on today. It's phenomenal. Robert is the founder of Comfort Cares. He's doing some really awesome work for the kids, so much that I'm actually on to his location to help out tomorrow. So that's just a great thing. Rob is the founder, like I said. It's all yours, Robert.
Well, thank you so much, Pete. And Ted, thank you so much for having me on your show. You know, as I was saying earlier, this is so full circle for me. You know, for those of you who haven't heard my story, I guarantee you it probably didn't start off like most of yours. You know, I am the youngest of 10 kids. I grew up in the Maryland, Virginia, DC area. And my parents actually lived in and out of every shelter there was in the tri-state area. And for me, life was not easy. My parents were drug addicts, alcoholics, and some of the things that I remember as an early age is my father sitting in the big reclining chair when we did have a home to live in, and he would yell out and ask for his Pabst Blue Ribbon. And each one of my siblings would hope that he wouldn't call our name. And sure enough, he would call my name. And I would run as fast as I could to the refrigerator and grab that Pabst Blue Ribbon and run to the chair. And I knew no matter how fast I ran, I knew what was going to happen. See, I'm 53 years old, and every single morning I get reminded of what happened. He would take the cherry of his cigarette and put it out on my leg, just like he did my siblings. And that typically was a typical day for us. And that was what we called family. You know, year after year, until I was the age of 12, that was the kind of abuse that I endured every single day. My siblings endured every single day. And then I turned 12 and my parents died. It was actually the greatest gift that ever happened. And I can't imagine ever my children saying that today. But for me, the monster was gone. And the woman who was supposed to protect me was no longer going to be in my life either. And I entered what they call foster care. I remember walking up the driveway of my first home carrying a trash bag, all my belongings in it. I remember walking in the front door. I remember the woman pulling the clothes out. And I remember her saying that he doesn't even have any decent clothes to wear to church tomorrow, and he needs to get into the shower. I remember walking down the hallway, being put into a bathroom, the bathroom door shutting, and laying in the tub was a bar of soap. A bar of soap. I knew at that moment my life had changed. I knew at that moment, no matter how bad my biological parents were, my life was different. My brothers and sisters and I were all split up, and the majority of my brothers and sisters had already started falling to the wayside. See, I guarantee you that the people who are viewing this don't even realize the statistics that we have in foster care. We have 438,000 children sitting in a system that is absolutely shattered. The fact that all of these kids that are sitting in the system are literally carrying trash bags with their belongings in them, and that every single one of these kids feel they're disposable and they do not matter. And that's how I felt on that one particular day. But I decided that I was going to do something different. I was going to be a good kid. I was going to do well in school. And I wanted my foster parents to say, I love you. Year after year after year went by. And then all of a sudden, I'm 18 years old and I'm a senior in high school, 1984. I'll never forget it. I made it. I actually was going to be the first one in my family to graduate from high school. And so that 2 weeks after my 18th birthday in the fall of 84, I came home from school, and lo and behold, there sitting by the front door was my trash bag.
Wow.
Full. My foster parents informed me that because I was 18 and I had aged out of the foster care system, that I no longer had a place to live. And I literally became a homeless kid. living on the streets of Northern Virginia. I remember that first night sleeping on the streets with my trash bag. And I remember realizing at that night that if I didn't go to school and if I didn't get that diploma, that I was going to end up like so many others. See, 30,000 children this year are going to age out of foster care. And out of 30,000, 70% of them are going to experience homelessness within the first 2 years. And I was that kid. So the next day, I woke up, I took my trash bag, I hid it behind the school, and I walked into the school and I proceeded to get an education. Every single day, I would go into that school with my head held high, and I would make sure that kids didn't make fun of me, that they didn't laugh because of the holes in my shoes. I couldn't tell you the last time I had had a haircut, or much less had gone to the dentist. Nobody cared, and nobody looked at me. I remember other students being called out of class by the guidance counselor to talk about their future, but no one ever looked at me. See, you have to admit that if you looked at me and you acknowledged me, then you would have to realize as a community, you failed me.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why people just didn't want to talk to me. And then the graduation day happened. It happened in June. I remember they lined us all up with our caps and gowns. I remember the auditorium was packed with people. I remember as they called out the names, people were screaming and clapping and yelling, and then they called my name. Yep, that's exactly what I heard. Nothing. No one clapped. No one yelled. No one held a sign. And I walked off that stage, and instead of going back into my seat, I left the auditorium. I went back into the packed parking lot, and I sat on the curb, and I cried for the very first time. I cried for my mom and my dad, who I missed so much, my brothers and sisters who were already serving time in prison, who were teenage pregnancies. I cried for my community that had failed me and that had forgotten me. And then after I cried, I finally realized I was homeless. I literally was homeless. See, when I was in school, I used to be able to go to school and I would have that school there for 8 hours a day. I would wait till all the kids left the cafeteria and I would dig through the trash and gather as much food as I could to make sure I could eat that night. And when I wasn't working my $3.35 an hour job at the local taco place, who, by the way, they were so nice when they realized I was homeless, they would leave the outside bathroom door unlocked so I could sleep. I would sit in the public library. And I would sit in that library and I would read every book I got my hands on because I knew if I could educate my mind, I could educate my future. And at that moment, I realized I was a homeless kid. I walked the streets for a couple of weeks until I realized that the only thing I could do was join the military. And that's what I did. I joined the United States Navy. I joined the Navy, by the way, not because I wanted to protect any of you. I joined the Navy because I was hungry, I was scared, and I needed a roof over my head. I ended up going to Great Lakes, Illinois. I ended up excelling in the Navy, and I got out, and I'll never forget, I had gotten out of the Navy not because I wanted to. See, when I was a little boy, for 12 years, if I went to the bathroom, my father would punch me in my bladder, just like he did my siblings. After 12 years of the constant punching over and over, I realized that if I went to the bathroom in my mind, I would be punched again. So I would hold my bladder as long as I could. Well, as I was in the Navy in my first year, my bladder ruptured, and I ended up going into the hospital for emergency surgery. After the Navy had fixed me, they realized that because back in the 80s, there wasn't a need to keep someone who, had surgery, that they discharged me. They gave me 1 month of pay, and they actually gave me a one-way plane ticket to Dulles Airport. I flew to Dulles Airport and realized at that moment I was homeless again. I hitchhiked down Route 7 and I found a little town called Gore, Virginia, where I was able to rent a hotel by the week. I knew that I had enough money saved that I could last for a couple of months in this hotel. And I ended up getting a job at what they call the Dart, which is basically like Target. It was called the Dart back for these older people like me. And I would go and hitchhike down into Winchester, Virginia, and I would work at the Dart. Well, it got to about a couple of weeks before I was getting ready to run out of money, and I realized that I was going to be homeless. And so I went back to my safe place, my safe place, which was the public library. I pulled out a piece of paper, I stuck it in a manual typewriter, I grabbed a telephone book, and I proceeded to type one of the best resumes there were. I typed a resume so well I would have hired myself and both of you. I remember that day. I remember my palms sweating because I knew that everything on that piece of paper was a lie. And if someone found out, I thought I would go to jail. And what did I do? I walked into a mortgage company. A mortgage company. They were advertising and they needed help. A junior processor is what they were looking for. And I walked in and I applied for the job. I remember sitting behind the desk as I was being interviewed, and my palms were sweating and my underarms were sweating. And I'm thinking, they're going to call everybody on the resume and they're going to find out that I'm a liar. They're going to call everybody and then they're going to call the police and I'm going to go to jail. Well, guess what? They actually hired me. They actually gave me a job right on the spot. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is crazy. They hired me. And I started working. And by the way, when my boss would tell me to come to work at 8 a.m., I would get there at 6 a.m. And when my boss told me I could leave at 6 p.m., I would stay till 8 a.m. I carried a yellow tablet. I wrote everything down. I would ask every loan officer what they knew, every underwriter what they knew, all the processors what they knew. And I started climbing the corporate ladder. I started excelling. I got my own apartment. I got my own car. I was living the American dream. The dream that my community had taught me, by the way, guys, the dream that it was about me. See, I had realized at that point, so many people had said, buy the big house and you have succeeded. Buy the expensive car and you have succeeded. And fill your checking account up with enough money that I can take all of you to Disney World. See, that was what my 3 golden rings were. And I was making that happen until 2 years into that job. The weight of the lie weighed on me so heavy that I walked into that office of my boss and I handed him my letter of resignation. He said, "What is this?" I said, "You know, the resume that I had gave you 2 years ago when you gave me an opportunity," I said, "it was all a lie." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I had made it all up." I said, "You have to understand that I was getting ready to be homeless again." And I proceeded to tell him my story. He looked at me and he said, "Rob, you are the most honest person I've ever met. You are the hardest worker that I have ever had." And he ripped up my letter of resignation and he said, "Get back to work." See, that one act of kindness completely changed my life. And that's exactly what I did. I went back to work. And I climbed that corporate ladder like you wouldn't believe. I became an underwriter, then an operations manager. And then the next thing you know, I was a vice president of operations. And then the next thing you know, I was working for a bank and I had almost 1,000 employees all over the country that were reporting to me. And I had exceeded. I had exceeded. I had owned a big home in the District of Columbia. I didn't buy one expensive car. I bought 2. And then I had as much money in the bank that I traveled, but I never told people my story. See, I was worried that if you all knew that I was the homeless kid, that you wouldn't invite me to your table. I was worried that if you knew that I didn't know the difference between there, and there, that you wouldn't want to be a part of my life. So I never told anyone. I remember one night I was sitting at dinner at Mayor Fitney's house, which he was the mayor of DC at the time. And the mayor looked at me and he said, "Rob, tell me about your past." And I remember looking at him and laughing and saying, "Come on, my friend, your past is your past. Let's talk about our future." And see, that's what I would tell people until 11 years ago. 11 years ago, my life completely changed. See, I always knew that I wanted to be a dad. From the moment I was 6 years old, as I saw the neighbor father throwing footballs with their sons and laughing and hugging them, I knew I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be a dad so I could be a dad like a dad I didn't have. And 11 years ago, 2 of the most amazing humans came into my life. My daughter, Amaya, who was 4, and her little brother, Makai, who was 2 years old. And I was absolutely shocked when they walked into our home. They had trash bags from the foster care system. I remember looking at the social worker and saying, are you kidding me that after all of these years, we still carry trash bags? And she said, what else should they carry? I said, there's some dignity, some dignity. And then life started. All of a sudden, we were parents to 2 kids, and one who, by the way, was special needs, and we were told he was never going to walk and never going to talk. See, I remember that very first night that my children were there. I remember taking my daughter shopping, and we filled the carts, not 1, but 2 Target carts with everything she looked at. I just wanted her to smile. We got home. I filled the bathtub up with all of these bubbles, and she got into the tub. And I remember looking at Reese and saying, I am the happiest man in the world. I have finally became a father, and I am a dad to the saddest little girl in the world. And I don't think she's ever going to smile. She got out of the tub. She put on her little pink robe, walked into her new bedroom, and Reese had laid 3 nightgowns on the bed. She walked over and picked one of them up, and she tore the tag off, and she smiled for the very first time. I remember saying to her, Amaya, why are you smiling? She said, Mr. Rob, I've never owned a new nightgown before. See, that's just not acceptable. And little would I know that 3 months later, the social worker would call again, and they say, we have 2 brothers who truly need a home. The youngest is 6 months, and his brother is 2. They'd been in the system in 3 other homes. Their mother was 12 when she gave birth to the first one, and 14 when she gave birth to the second one. These were kids who were product of an environment and a system that their mother was a product of. They came into the system with bleeding of the brain, shaken baby syndrome, and 3 broken ribs. I remember looking at those 2 boys when they arrived carrying their trash bags, and I thought, how could we do this? How could we be a community that say we care so much about children, but we don't realize the damage that we're doing by giving them a trash bag? But all of a sudden, we were parents to 4 kids within a matter of 3 months. And by the way, ladies, as you were watching this show, you had 9 months to prepare. We had 3. And we had 4 kids all in diapers. But you know what? We just decided to make it work. And every day I would go to work. I had an office on the East Coast and an office on the West Coast, and I was constantly traveling. And we decided to move out of the city and move into the suburbs. But when we moved to the suburbs, we had read a book about a young girl in foster care who had fetal alcohol syndrome, which is what one of my sons have. And in the book, it talked about them being raised around farm animals and how it helped their frontal lobe. I remember Reese telling me the story in the article, and I said, this is crazy. And he said, yes, here's 5 farms for sale. And we literally bought a farm. We bought a farm with goats and chickens, and we even have a pig named Penelope. But we also have a son who is now 13 years old, who we were told was never going to walk, who was never going to talk. And by the way, he's always talking and he's always walking, normally with a chicken under his arm. But Micaiah taught me the most important thing, and that is how to be a good human. Well, 7 years ago, as I was sitting in my office in Rockville, Maryland, we were getting ready to prepare for our typical toy drive. Every year, we would do these big toy drives in front of Ben's Chili Bowl with the local radio station, and we would collect thousands of toys. Every title company would come, and all of the other mortgage companies and appraisal management companies, they would all come and donate toys. And we would collect thousands of toys for kids in the foster care system. But this one particular year, Reese walked into my office and said, it's time to start doing the toy drive. And I said, I don't want to do it. And he said, what do you mean you don't want to do it? He said, our kids look forward to shopping. He's like, our community loves this. He was like, why do you not want to do it? I said, what are we teaching our kids? I said, are we teaching our kids because we are privileged that if we give a needy kid a toy, it makes it all better? I guarantee you that our children wake up on December the 26th, just like we all do, and probably none of us think about that kid. I said, how are we truly in our community? Isn't that what we're all supposed to do as leaders? As leaders, we are supposed to get into the game and play and not just stand on the sidelines. He said, Rob, what do you want to do? I said, I want to eliminate trash bags. Ted and Pete, I'm not kidding you. He looked at me and said, "You are batshit crazy." I said, "You know what?" I said, "I've heard that many times before, but I think we can do it. I think that we can make cases that we could give to kids in DC and Maryland and truly make a change." So we got some of our great friends together, some of our members of our church. We also got some of my senior managers together, and we whiteboard what would we put in a case. And of course, my children were there, and my kids were like iPods, iPads. I was like, we're not giving them what they want. We want to give them what they need.
Yes.
So we started making the list, and I started to tell my story, a story that I had not told any of my employees, a story that I had not told many people that were sitting around that table. And as I was telling my story, I realized at that moment the weight off my shoulders was coming off. And I realized what things needed to go into a case. Number one, a brand new pair of pajamas with a tag on it. Number two, I wanted every child to have their own toothbrush and their own toothpaste. And by the way, my beautiful pearly whites, and they are beautiful. They cost me an arm and a leg because nobody bothered to stop to give me a toothbrush. I want to make sure that every child gets their own lotion, their own shampoo, their own conditioner, and their own bar of soap. I remind you, I told you what it was when I was 12. None of you would ever go to a hotel and ask them to leave the bar of soap from the people before you. Why do we make kids go into strangers' homes and use a bar of soap? We must make sure they have their own. I then want to make sure that every child has their own activity. The majority of kids who come into the system go to what we call holding centers, safe houses. They call them crisis centers. I want to make sure that they have an activity that belongs to them. Kids who are under the age of 10 get a coloring book and crayons, and kids who are over the age of 10 get a journal and a pen and pencil set. About 3 years ago, I was filming a CNN special, and there was a 13-year-old boy who got one of our cases. As he unzipped the case and started to pull the items out, he started to cry. I stopped the cameras and I went down and I said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Mr. Rob, I've been in foster care for 3 years. I've been in 11 homes, 11. He said, every time I go into a home, I have all this music in my mind. He says, the only thing I've ever wanted," and he pulled out his journal, "is a journal to write my music in. You know, to that boy, that was gold. To that boy, that was his future. To that boy, it made him feel his community loved him." By the way, it was a 50-cent composition book.
Right.
Then we give every child a book. I truly believe as an author, I wrote my book for 2 reasons. Number one, I want you to love it in your mind. Number two, I want you to love it in your heart. But as I write in my book, the most flattering thing you could ever do is pass the book on. See, there's no such thing as a used book. It's only a book that's been loved. Books shouldn't sit on bookshelves and collect dust. We need to give them to children and let them read them, because we know that if kids read and they educate their mind, they will educate their future. And then we give every kid a stuffed animal. It doesn't matter to me whether you're a newborn or 19, which are the ages we do our cases. Everybody loves a good stuffy. And then finally, my son Grayson, he was 6 years old. He came to us at the age of 2. His mother was 12. And he looked at me and said, "Daddy, we have to give every single kid a blankie." I said, "A blankie?" He said, "You do know these kids are not cold." He said, "No, Daddy. Every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them." Guys, isn't that what we all want? At the end of the day, we all want to be loved. We all want to know that we matter. We all want to know that we are part of a bigger picture, which is our community. See, the problem is so many of us think that our community is our zip code, but it's not. Our community is not our zip code. It's our human race. And our forefathers did not build communities for us to have big houses. They built communities for us to take care of each other. So we started building cases, one case after the next. And before you know it, 7 years later, we have given out over 100,000 cases to all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And I know I don't have to remind your smart watchers that Puerto Rico belongs to us. It is surrounded by water, but so is Hawaii. We must take care of our own. We must realize that the children who are in the system deserve better. This year, only 54% of them will graduate from high school. Only 11% will apply to college, and only 3% will get a college education. I know, by giving them a case and not giving them a trash bag, it will start them off on the right direction. You know, we're a 96% volunteer ran charity. We have no corporate sponsors. Our charity was built on the love of our community. 2 years ago, I left the mortgage industry after over 25 years to be on a book tour because my book had come out and Derek Jeter published my book. And when Derek came to me and said, "You have to go on a book tour," I said, "Are you crazy?" I was like, "I'm the breadwinner in my house. I am not leaving my job. I love the industry." And he says, "But you have to go on a book tour." So I made a decision at that moment. I remember going home and telling my family that I was going to leave my corporate job and I was going to go around the country and teach people and let people know that we all have an opportunity to stop blaming the system, but an opportunity to make change within the system. And I believe one case at a time, that's going to happen. And so, guys, that's my story. We're located in Rockville, Maryland. You can go to comfortcases.org. There's always opportunities for everybody to help. And I will say this, the next time you want to go to that overpriced coffee shop that we all visit, please go to Target, go to Walmart, buy a pair of pajamas. Take that money and donate it to Comfort Cases because we truly are making change.
I mean, that is probably the best. I really didn't need to be here. That was amazing. I have some questions, if you guys will indulge, mainly because your experiences in the beginning are similar to mine. I was never in foster care, but I think having served a lot of foster care aging out organizations, I think people don't understand. You think of foster care and you think, all right, they're in a house at least. And people do not understand that being in foster care, there's a monetary reward for the parents, and there are amazing parents, so I'm not dissing the parents, but those kids don't have it made, which is Rob's story right there. And then at 18, you are packing your bags and you're out, guys. So if you have been in the foster care system for 5, 7, 10, your whole life years, you're out all of a sudden, and there are so few resources for you to be able to age out, to know what the next step is. And guess what? When you're 17 and you have the whole year, nobody's talking to you about it. Nobody's telling you, hey, you better get your stuff together at 18 because you're out in the house and you have hopefully a comfort case, but a bag waiting for you. And you have to figure it out on your own with absolutely no help. And so your story, sadly, is not the exception to what goes on in the foster care system and in the world. So what a powerful, powerful story. I am so honored and privileged to have you share that, because I think a lot of people in your position would not take the time to share that underbelly, but we have to share the things that we have gone through because you're out there making such a difference. That message of a trash bag, guys, if you don't get it, think about it. You're giving them a trash bag. So what do they feel like? Trash.
Yes.
They feel like trash. So having a comfort case is such a huge deal. And I love that you incorporated your kids into what it was for them and what was important, and how beautiful a message. So,
well, Ted, I got to tell you so. Ted, I have to tell you something. So I talk in my book, A Forever Family, I talk about my 4 children, and if you go and you Google us, we just finished filming a show with Bryce Howard, it just came out in June, called Dads, and it's about my 4 children. But in the fall of last year, I was giving a speech at a local high school, and a young boy walked up to me and asked to have his book autographed. I asked the boy to tell tell me what your name is. And he said, Alex. I said, Alex, tell me your story. He says, I don't have one. He says, I'm going to be 19 in the beginning of the year, and I'm going to be homeless just like you were. Yep. Well, I'm here to tell you that Alex is my son. He is our 5th child. He arrived in our home in the fall of last year. He just graduated from high school. He graduated with a 3.6, and he's enrolled in college. But the thing is, he has aged out of foster care, but he didn't age out of our family, and he will be with us. So we're no longer the sheer 6, we're the sheer 7.
I love it. All right, so what's the best way for people to get involved? I have comfortcases.org streaming across the bottom. But if they want to reach out to you, if they want to know more, they want to learn more, maybe more they can do in their community, they want to read your book, they want to get involved, what's the best way for them to do that, Rob?
Well, first of all, I would definitely tell them to go to comfortcases.org. They can email us at info@comfortcases.org. By the way, I answer all my own emails. People get shocked when I actually reply. They can also follow us on all of our social media platforms. They can actually buy our book, A Forever Family, Fostering Change, One Child at a Time. Every time you buy this book, it builds a case. It builds a case. And the fact is that people need to realize that we all can do. We all can do. You know, I started this out talking about the 3 golden rings, my big house, the expensive car, the big money. Well, guess what? This journey's taught me something totally different. My 3 rings are actually my family, my community, and my dash. And we've all heard the poem. We're all given one. Whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're male, whether you're female, whether you're gay or whether you're straight, each one of us will be given the same exact thing, and that's a dash. The year you're born, the dash, and the year you die. Make your dash impactful. Make your dash shine so bright that when people walk by it, they know that you did what you said you were going to do, and that's make change. So visit comfortcases.org. Take $10 a month. $10. People don't even realize $10 a month literally can help us take a trash bag away from a child. Each and every one of us can afford $10 a month. Some of us can afford more than that. Understand that we are 96% volunteer ran. We ship 50 cases at a time to agencies all over our country, and we pay for that shipping. So we need the help. When you guys reached out to me, I'm telling you, it could not have happened at a better time. For what you're doing, you're really making change. And that's what companies are supposed to do, is we're all supposed to step up and lead by example. And you guys are doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I can speak for the whole home team. We're honored and privileged to be even part of helping your organization. What you all are doing is absolutely amazing. And if you all have not been involved in the foster care system or what those kids go through, you should really educate yourself. And now you can help. Rob and his company have made it easy for you to make a giant, enormous lifetime impact on the kids in foster care. Thank you, Rob Scheer, so much. Peter Yanni, for bringing Rob to the table.
No problem.
Such an honor. Thank you so much, Rob.
Comfortcases.org.
I want to know more about your story. I have tons of questions, but that'll be for another show if you'll indulge me.
Well,
now, I love this. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. So much appreciation for what you do. Definitely honored to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you later. Comfortcases.org. Comfortcases.org. You have to reach out. Thank you, guys. Mwah. We'll see you guys later. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.